because if you're just winging it, you are going to spend a lot more than you plan on. Hey blushing brides, congrats on your engagement and welcome to my channel. I am so happy to have you here. My name is Kyle James and I am a wedding planner and event designer, and I post new videos every single week on all things wedding planning and bride lifestyle. So if you're not already, be sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any of my upcoming wedding planning videos. The budget tends to be a very high stress point for most couples, but it also tends to be the thing that people neglect the most, which is definitely not the answer. It makes it much more stressful and much harder to stick to a budget if you are going to just ignore it. The more organized and intentional you can be around your wedding budget, the easier this is going to be for you. In this video, I'm going to cover the top wedding budget mistakes that most couples make, but you're not going to because you're watching this. And then we'll figure out how much you should actually be spending on your wedding and come up with your total wedding budget. And then I'm going to show you how to break it down between all of the different categories so you know exactly how much you have to spend on each and every aspect of your wedding day. There are free worksheets for you in the description below. Go ahead and go visit the link and download those and print those before you continue on in this video, because you'll definitely want to have those in front of you while you're figuring out your budget. Those are the actual worksheets from my Unveiled Ultimate Planner, but I am sharing them with you for free today as part of this workshop. So be sure that you go and grab those. They are worth their weight in gold. Oh my gosh. They will help you so much. Okay, let's start with the biggest wedding budget mistakes that most couples make, and then we will go into creating your budget and allocating it and all that fun stuff. So the first huge mistake that so many couples make is they don't even set a budget, or they don't set a specific budget. Oh my gosh. If you are not setting a very specific, intentional budget, you are going to spend way more than you are wanting to. I can promise you that. I've seen couples where they're like, oh, it's somewhere between like $20,000 to $30,000. That's a pretty big gap. $10,000 is a lot. So you definitely want to be very specific and nail down a specific budget so that you have some idea of how much you're going to spend. Because if you're just winging it, you are going to spend a lot more than you plan on. The next huge mistake that I see most couples make that's very costly is they don't break their budget down into specific categories. So maybe they do pick a specific number and they have an idea of what they want, but they have no idea of how much they should be spending within each category. Here's what happens when you don't consciously allocate your wedding budget. You pick a number and then you just start booking vendors because it seems like that's about right, or it's under your total budget, so it's fine. And so you just start booking stuff, and then all of a sudden your entire wedding budget is gone and you can't book a vendor that maybe you really wanted to have, that you were really looking forward to, or you have to like double your budget to be able to finish booking the rest of your vendors. So we really want to know right from the beginning how much you have to spend on each and every vendor, and then you can make the decisions of, oh, this vendor is a little bit over budget, but we can just pull from this other thing to be able to get there, rather than just kind of winging it. And then the last mistake that a lot of couples make is they don't track their wedding expenses as they go. They have no idea how much of their initial budget they've spent. And this is actually really important, because a lot of times you will book your vendors and you pay like a 20 to 40% down payment on them, and then when the wedding day rolls around, you need to pay the rest of the vendor fees. And if that's too much for you, that's not going to be good. So it's really important to really track how much you have spent and then adjust your other budgets as you go. So if you do overspend in one category, you know that you did that and you can pull from other categories to make up for that. And you're just not overspending in every single category, because if you overspend in every category, you'll end up like doubling or tripling your budget. I cannot tell you the number of couples I've seen that have literally doubled their wedding budget. So it's really important to track your expenses as you go and know how much you have spent and how much you have to spend. I do include budget trackers in those worksheets. So if you haven't already, go grab those free worksheets. It's totally free. It's just a link in the description. Pause the video, go grab them, download them, and print them so that you have them in front of you for the next part of the video. And like I said, those do include tracking worksheets for each and every aspect, so you'll really know how much you've spent on this thing and how much you have due coming up when the wedding day rolls around, so there's not a huge surprise there. That is not a fun surprise for your wedding day. Okay, once you have your worksheets ready and printed off and in front of you, let's talk about how much you should actually spend on your wedding day. Instead of just like pulling a number out of the air and taking a wild guess, the way I like to think about this is think about you wake up on the day after your wedding and you get handed a bill for the total cost of your wedding that you owe. How much would you feel comfortable seeing there? I think a lot of couples start to get overwhelmed by how much they need to spend, and they don't think about how much they're actually comfortable spending, and then after the wedding day they feel like it wasn't really worth it because they way overspent and didn't think about the fact that it's only one day, and they didn't consider how much they're actually comfortable spending. They were just going into it blindly and spending. So really think about, with you and your partner, how much do you feel comfortable spending on one day? I know it's a really important day and it does matter, and trust me, I'm the first person to like love to spend money on weddings, but you don't want to spend way more than you're comfortable with because it's not going to be worth it when you wake up the next day. So on the first page of the budget worksheets, under the bride and groom line, go ahead and write out how much you and your partner are actually comfortable spending on your big day. And you should probably consider asking your partner theirs as well. This is something you want to agree upon. It's definitely never worth it to be arguing back and forth on this number and have financial struggles in your relationship during your wedding planning process. It's much better to come to an agreement and spend less money if you need to in order to have a more happy relationship. For this example, let's say you're going to do $12,000. Now you might be saying, well, I don't know what a good amount is. I heard that weddings need to be at least X amount. This is the average. Whatever. The most important factor here, and I can't stress it enough, is how much you feel comfortable spending on your wedding day. What is the number that is going to feel actually worth it to you? No matter how fantastic and grand your wedding day is, it will not be worth it if you're putting extreme financial pressure on your relationship right from the beginning of your marriage. I do know for a fact that you can plan a wedding on any budget. For smaller budgets, you do need to be more flexible and maybe a little bit more creative. The average wedding budget these days is about $25,000 to $35,000. That does not mean that that is right for you. That might be way too much. That might be too little. But I just want to give you an idea of what the average wedding costs. I've seen gorgeous weddings planned for less than half of that. And I've personally planned amazing weddings for less than half of that. So don't feel any pressure around that. I just want to give you an idea of what weddings can cost. But it's totally up to you how much you actually feel comfortable spending here. So the other thing that you'll need to consider here is what it's going to take to be able to get to spend the amount that you chose. So you might need to pick up some extra work, or you might need to cut out your Starbucks addiction or something like that. There's going to be something that you're going to have to give up. If you are wanting to spend more, but you don't really have the resources to do so, then you might want to push your wedding out a little bit further. Give yourself a little bit more time to plan, because that will allow you some extra time to save up the money. But if you already have an idea of where you're going to get the money, or you're able to save up earlier, then that's great. But time and money are kind of interchangeable here. If you want to spend more, then you might need to push it out. If you are willing to spend less, or you're a little bit more flexible, then you can plan with less time. So the next part that we want to figure out is the amount of money that you are going to receive as contributions to your wedding budget. In order to get to that total number, we need to know who is contributing and exactly how much. So these are conversations that you want to have up front. Do not go and book your entire wedding and then come to your parents and be like, I thought that you were gonna help me pay for this. It's really important to have these discussions up front and sit down and figure out the numbers together before you go and book anything. So money is an uncomfortable issue for a lot of people. That's totally normal, but I promise you it's gonna be way more worth it to sit down and have maybe an uncomfortable conversation than to make any assumptions here. But we'll say the bride's parents are going to contribute $10,000, the groom's parents $5,000, and let's say you have some grandparents who want to do $3,000. So once you've written out all of the people who are contributing and how much, then we can add those together. In this example, our total wedding budget will be $30,000. I think it can be helpful to have an idea how much you want your total wedding budget to be so that you can kind of explain this with whoever's contributing to it, and then they can decide if they want to contribute the amount that you're asking for, or less or more. It can kind of give them an idea of how much you're looking for. Something to keep in mind when you are accepting contributions from family members to your wedding budget is that they're most likely going to expect some say in the details. So when you're sitting down to have the conversation with them of how much they are wanting to put in, it's really important for you to discuss their expectations around the wedding planning process. So like your future mother-in-law might want to be like throwing 50 grand at you for the wedding, but she might have the exact venue picked out, like everything picked out. She's inviting all her friends, and if you are okay with that, cool, then you can decide on that then. But if not, then you might be willing to accept less money from somebody if you have like a specific vision, or you want to keep it small or something like that. In order for you to have like more control over the details and stuff, you might need to accept less money. So once you've had these conversations and you've figured out where all of your funding is coming from, then you can add up all those numbers and come to a total wedding budget. This is literally the foundation to the entire wedding, and if there are cracks in it, then stuff is just gonna fall through. We wanna make sure that this is really solid and that you're making great decisions here that are going to benefit your future relationships and your marriage. It's really, really important, and it's something that's just not worth it to neglect, overlook, and just not make these conscious decisions. So once you have that final number, then we can flip to the next page of your wedding worksheets, and now it's time to break it down by category. So in these worksheets, I have the percentage amounts that I usually use when I'm planning weddings, and they've worked well for me. But depending on your budget and what's important to you, this might change. So I suggest going through and just using the first sheet to break it down by the percentages that I suggest. And then you can go through and cross things out and add and subtract budget from certain places depending on what's more important to you. So for instance, if you know you're going to spend more on your dress than it comes out to, then you can just figure out what's less important to you and pull money from there to be able to increase your dress budget to the amount that you're wanting. It's really important for you to actually do this, because if you're just like, oh no, that's not going to work, oh no, that's not going to work, and you're not intentional or conscious about it, then that is when your wedding budget ends up doubling. And that's not good. So it's totally fine if you want to spend more on certain categories, but you really need to decide where that money is coming from, whether it's a different category or maybe you need to come up with more funding for your wedding. If you need a little math refresher to figure it out, we're going to do our budget, which in this example is $30,000, and we're going to take that times 0.05 to get 5%. So it's going to be $1,500. And then we'll just go through and do the same thing for each of the percentages. And then you'll want to go through and add up all of those dollar figures just to double check your math and make sure that you end up at your total budget. And once you've double checked your math, then you can go through and look at the dollar figures and decide if you want to make any adjustments. So let's say you know that you're going to spend way more than like $2,500 on your dress. You are going to do a cheaper DJ, so we can take $1,000 out of there. So we'll mark that out, take $1,000 out, and move $1,000 up to bride attire. you can see here with a $30,000 budget, which is pretty big, that actually doesn't give us a ton of money in each category. I feel like a lot of girls with a $30,000 budget go and book like a $10,000 venue and then completely blow that budget, and that's how it kind of ends up snowballing and you end up spending $60,000 when you've meant to spend $30,000. On the worksheet I gave you, this actually has 2 pages. So this first page of the budget allocation is kind of like just a place for you to work out your numbers so you can make it really messy. And then I gave you a second page once you get it all figured out to write out your final budget so that you have a pretty copy of this to actually work from. And then ta-da, we have a wedding budget. So I have 3 more tips for you for how to actually stick to your budget now that you have one. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you about the Unveiled Ultimate Planner and the Bride Society. The Unveiled Ultimate Wedding Planner Workbook is 160 pages of wedding planning worksheets. So those budget worksheets that you have in front of you, those are a great example of the types of worksheets that are in there. The other worksheets that you'll find in there are calendars. So I have like actual calendar pages where you can plan out when you're gonna work on each item. And then there are 12 monthly wedding planning checklists. So if you are a little bit further out than 12 months, no problem, you can just start working through them. But it does give you a guide of exactly what you should have done by each of the months leading up to your big day. It also makes it more of like a digestible task. If you just look at one huge wedding planning checklist, it can feel extremely overwhelming. So I think breaking it down into 12 smaller checklists actually makes it really easy for you to focus on each task and to actually get it all done. And then there are a bunch of other planning worksheets that walk you through things like creating your vision, obviously your budget, doing your guest list, and just keeping everything organized and tracking everything. There are also questions to ask worksheets for each and every vendor, so very specific questions that you should be asking all of your vendors before you book them so that you can make sure all of the details are covered and that you're able to really get the most out of how much you're spending on these vendors. So those are really, really important. There are worksheets to organize your bridal party and all of your vendors, worksheets to organize your rentals, your decor, and your floral, and then worksheets to keep the actual day of extremely organized. So obviously by now you can tell that there are so many little details and so much going on, but having everything tracked and written out and in worksheets will help you to be super organized, and it will help your big day to actually be enjoyable for you and to run smoothly. So let's talk about the Bride Society really quick. The Bride Society membership does include the Unveiled Ultimate Planner Workbook, so you get complete access to that, plus you get the Be Your Own Wedding Planner course, which is a step-by-step e-course taught by yours truly that will walk you through each and every vendor, how to book them, what you should be looking for, your different options, and just basically the entire process of how to book your entire wedding. Your membership will also include access to the Bride Society community, where me and the other brides hang out all the time, talk about all things wedding planning. We share ideas, just support each other. It's so much fun. There's such great conversations and ideas that come out of there. I love it so much. It's fun to actually be able to be more one-on-one with you ladies and really help you plan your wedding. You also get tons and tons of bonus content from me, so all the things that I discuss in my videos, I just take it to the next level over there. And then I save my best, juiciest tips for my Bride Society members. And then you also get tons of deals and discounts. So I have like over $500 worth of exclusive discount codes on things like Birdie Gray bridesmaids dresses, wedding favors, Sakara meal delivery service, just tons of things to help you save money throughout your wedding planning process. And on top of all that, you get access to my app where you have all of that stuff right at your fingertips throughout your entire wedding planning process. I will put the link for that in the description below, so if you're interested in planning with me and taking your wedding planning to the next level, I highly recommend joining the Bride Society. It's so much fun, and it really just helps you make the most out of your wedding planning process. All right, now let's get into my tips for actually sticking to your wedding budget. Number 1 is to track everything. Oh my gosh, wedding things add up so much, and you might be distracted by the high ticket items like the venue or the catering and stuff like that. But you need to be tracking everything because it adds up so fast and it can be very sneaky. If you think about it, if you're just purchasing something that's like $5 or $10 here and there, but then you multiply that by like 200 guests, it really does start to add up. So it's really important that you're using those tracking worksheets that are included in those free worksheets that you downloaded to make sure that you're really keeping track of everything and you know how much you have left to spend. My next tip is to never meet with vendors outside of your budget. So before you go and meet with any vendors, you need to look at your allocated budget and know the exact number of how much you have to spend. And then you need to email or call them and ask them how much they cost. And do not go if it does not line up. At least it needs to be at least be close, because you don't want to be shopping way outside of your budget and then you go look at these incredible venues or dresses or whatever, and then you start shopping in your budget and they just don't compare. Whereas if you would have just started within your budget in the first place, it would seem really, really awesome. I like to use the analogy of don't go test drive a Porsche if you're in the market for a Honda. Because the Honda is great and it can be the perfect car, but if you're comparing it to a Porsche, it's just not gonna be that great. So don't do that. And then my next tip is to sit down and have a monthly budget check-in meeting with you and your partner. So you want to go through and look at all your trackers and really see where you're at before you move forward with your wedding planning. So I suggest doing this check-in meeting monthly and then also right before you go and meet with any vendors, so that you are on the same page and you know exactly how much you have to spend before you go into the meeting. So I do have tons more tips and tricks on the budget and then on the entire wedding planning process in my workbook and in my course, and over in the Bride Society community. We're always talking about new things over there. I will put all the information about that and the link for you to join in the description below. I hope this video was helpful for you and help you to kind of wrap your head around at least the start of the wedding planning process. If this video was helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Also, send this one over to the other brides in your life. If it was helpful for you, it will probably be helpful for them as well. They will definitely thank you. And we'll see you next time. Happy planning.
Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? Forever. 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 I watch you as you drive. Do you know I'm looking?